With the development of new vaccines, this is where DNA technology has really come into play and has been helpful as far as developing new vaccines, okay? So in terms of the new vaccines out there, kind of a new area is using genetic engineering to our advantage to introduce virulent factors into our immune system to mount an immune response, okay? Because where things are starting to get tricky with the development of vaccines, all right, is going to be for something like the HIV virus. There are people who are working actively at researching a vaccine for the HIV virus. The problem with the HIV virus that we talked a little bit about previously when we went over viruses is that the HIV virus can remain latent for extended periods of time, all right? So essentially what it happens when it's latent, it's hidden within the DNA of the infected individual. And they either make very low levels of the virus or potentially they're not making it at all right? But where we're getting into vaccines now, all right, are addressing things like how do we get around the fact that some viruses have the ability to hide, okay? This is where genetic engineering can help, all right? Maybe not necessarily specifically with the HIV virus, all right? But essentially what's happening with genetic engineering, all right, is those researchers are using DNA technology. And what they're doing with that DNA, they're taking the DNA from whatever that infectious material is, whether it be viral or bacterial. Okay? And they're taking that DNA and they're essentially then inserting it into a non-pathogenic live host. Okay? And in terms of my notes, I've got this this is going to be your Trojan Horse vaccine. All right? Essentially what happens, all right, that non-pathogenic host then is introduced into the individual, and essentially you're going to use that bacteria to make that infectious DNA, and that will be what your immune system recognizes and it mounts the immune response to, okay? Because what happens, those non-pathogenic bacteria are undergoing DNA replication, transcription, translation. So they're making the protein from that infectious material. And that infectious material then is exposed to the individual's immune system. The hope with those genetically engineered, with using the genetically engineered technology is then that your immune system recognizes that foreign material and you get an immune response generated to it, all right? So in terms of vaccinations, there's a lot going on with new technology, all right? And I want to, just because this is the last one, again, talk a little bit about the fact that what happens when you vaccinate is you're generating something known as herd immunity, all right? And I have another video for you to watch with a doctor who does a really nice job explaining why herd immunity is important. But essentially what happens with herd immunity, all right, is you get protection for the unvaccinated population. So in a previous video, I pointed out that there is a subset of the population that can't be vaccinated for usually medical reasons, all right? And in terms of that, as long as more than 95% of the population is vaccinated, that small percent that can't get a vaccine is still protected, okay? And again, this is going to be where anti-vaxxers are going to cause trouble for the general population, because those folks who believe, and it is a belief, it's not based in fact, those folks who believe that vaccines are harmful and so they're abstaining and not having their children vaccinated are expanding the percent of the population that's not vaccinated. And then what happens is that part of the community that is vulnerable is put at risk, all right? Because those folks who can't be vaccinated for a medical reason now have lost the herd immunity, okay? So in terms of that, the last couple slides I have associated with vaccinations kind of show the typical vaccine schedule. I took it right off the CDC website, okay? So if you want to go to the CDC website, that's where you're going to find those images. But it shows the schedule for vaccinations. And in terms of that, when people look at that, sometimes they think it's a little bit scary. It's like, oh, I've got like 6 or 7 things that I'm exposing my kids to. Your immune system's designed to work that way. When you encounter things in the environment, your immune system explores and tags things constantly, okay? So getting a series of vaccines all at one time is not harmful for your child, okay? It does tend to when you take your child to be vaccinated, all right? One of the things you may have noticed is that after they get the vaccine, the next day they've got a temperature, all right? In terms of that temperature, the fever, low-grade fever that children generate after vaccination, that's actually a really good sign. That's a sign that your immune system is responding to the vaccine and mounting an immune response, all right? I know it's annoying because your kid doesn't have a temperature in the morning and then you get the phone call from daycare and say, oh, they've got a fever, you've got to pick them up. And you tell them, oh, but they were vaccinated. You know, daycares have to follow certain protocols. But in terms of that, when your child has a fever after vaccination, you should take that as a good response. That means the immune system's responding, you're getting the proper immune cells in to activate and generate those B cells and T cells to generate those memory cells, okay? So the last couple slides just have an immunization schedule. That's really just more for you to look at. I promise I'm not going to test you over what age children should get the MMR versus other vaccines, okay? The last two are really for your just general knowledge, all right? If you have any questions, please let me know.